World Championships is simply the biggest title in squash. You know, to call yourself world champion, it's the absolute pinnacle of the game. I think whenever you're a world champion or a gold medalist in Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games, anything like that, it's just something that transcends the individual sport that you're in, something that lives with you next to your name, underneath your name, whenever you're introduced for the rest of your life, and no one can take that away from you. And probably the only other thing is getting to world number one, and you know, it's very hard to sort of separate the two. They're both amazing things, but for me, world champion is the absolute pinnacle, because it's the time that every player is trying to peak for and wants to get their name on that trophy, because it can never be taken away from you. Yeah, my first world title in Saudi Arabia in 2010 was a bit of a strange one, actually. You're in a resort there in Saudi Arabia, sort of in a little bubble. I remember in the evening, for example, when I had the trophy, I was just in the room on my own, not sure what to do with it. It was sort of a bit of a weirdly lonely feeling, but the way the tournament sort of panned out, I went in as world number one, but I certainly didn't see myself as the favourite. You know, I never won a world title. You had players like Ramy Ashour in there, Arma Shabana, who'd won 4 world titles up till that point, and to me they were the favourites. And then gradually, when they started falling by the wayside, you know, these thoughts start entering your mind. It could be my year, and you got to put them to one side and focus on what happened. And I remember in the final against James that weirdly, when you look back, there's just certain times that you just know that it's your time and your moment. I remember warming up and I just had a real certainty about what I was going to do on that day, even though I lost the first game. James played incredibly well, and I just knew on that day I was going to win. I don't know why. I just knew that was my time, and it's sort of a weird feeling, because I felt like that other times and lost. So, but on that day there was just a weird certainty. I didn't panic at any stage even when he won the first game, and you know, kept on my focus. And I remember even on match point, you know, didn't swerve at all, because I know that James can come back from anywhere, and it was just unbelievable feeling to lift my arms and win that first world title. I think that first world title was a real sort of watershed moment in my career. I'd been to world number one a few months earlier that year, but getting that world title, it cements your place in the sort of annals of the game, really. You know, something that can never be taken away from you. And I just thought that at that point, if I never achieved anything again ever, you know, I could always have that. And it was a bit of a strange feeling not being able to sort of share it at that moment with family, with it being in Saudi Arabia. And that's why, you know, the later ones, I probably have fonder memories of Rotterdam and Manchester in a weird sort of way, because I was able to share them with other people. Saudi was a bit of a strange feeling, and I remember going on and just wanting to sort of kick on from there and not stop at one. But Manchester was a whole different thing, you know, having that home support. I definitely didn't go into the week as favourite there. You know, everyone was looking at Ramy Ashour, you know, everyone was looking at Gregory Gaultier. Mohamed Shabaghi was up and coming at that point. I knew I had a good chance. You know, my record in Manchester is absolutely fantastic. I don't know what it is about the place I love so much, but you know, I knew I had a chance. But it wasn't until I split that tournament up into 2 weeks, you know, to try and manage it, 2 parts, should I say, and one part was when it was at Sports City, and then one part was when it moved to Manchester Central, and I just separated my thoughts. You know, my first goal for the week was to make sure I got into the second tournament, basically, and when I did that, I knew that it was 8 men, any one of them could win, and I got a little bit lucky in the semi-final. You know, Ramy, he was playing great, and you know, he couldn't complete the match, and because I got totally outplayed in the first game, and I came out in the second and thought, you know, I'm showing this guy way too much respect, and I started to attack him and take the game to him, and all of a sudden things changed. I got a bit of a lead. I don't know when he started feeling the injury, but it's a really hard situation.
Exhibition stuff now. He's given up.
Oh, I think there's something wrong with his leg. I think that was strange.
it's psychologically you're feeling sorry for the person who's had to pull out. No one wants to win a match like that, and it was a real shock to the system. What was really lucky in that tournament was that there was a squash court in the Midland Hotel that we were staying in over the road, and I actually went back there, and after I'd done sort of your media bits after the match, I went back and I had a practice and I hit for 45 minutes before getting kicked off by a couple of members who booked the court, which was quite funny. I've got a world final tomorrow, but they kicked me off anyway. But getting that hit, it really got that match out of my system and were able to sort of draw a line under it, and psychologically then I was ready to prepare for the next day. I wasn't really aware of the fact that it was live on BBC, the fact that the home crowd were there. It wasn't until I actually walked out, and usually I like to sort of just get a sense of the venue before I play. So I just like to, in Tournament Champions in New York, for example, I like to just stick my head in the match before and just see it. So I sort of, it's not a surprise when I walk out there myself. But you know, in the world final, it was just a men's event that year. We were the only match, so it wasn't really possible. I didn't want to start getting distracted, but I remember walking into the venue and sort of walking through the booths, and everyone was just really, you know, patting me on my back, and I sort of felt like a footballer playing at home. You know, all the home crowd want me to win, and I just sort of used that. Really, I used the energy, but at the same time made sure that I stayed in my bubble so that it didn't pierce that bubble, if that made sense. So psychologically it carried me rather than affecting me. And the way the first two games ended as well, a couple of strokes, I remember the crowd reactions on that. You know, there was lots of momentum shifts here, there, you know, and these small differences can make all the difference in big matches like that. Yeah, I must admit, I you know, thoughts went through my mind that I'd blown it. You know, I had a match ball to win 3-love, and I never beat Greg 3-love ever. And I remember on match ball just playing the worst shot in the history of squash. You know, just what was that? You know, choice of shot just changed my mind, and you know, stitched myself up big time. And then the fourth game was then a bit of a blur, sort of thinking, oh my God, I've blown it here. And you know, for all his tactical and technical nous, DP just told me, just get on the court and just hit the ball. You know, get your nerves, get those thoughts out of the system, and just hit it hard the first few points and just get back into a bit of a groove. And I remember the first rally, Greg hit across court, and I stepped up the tee. He said, step up the court and hit it hard. And I stepped high up the court and he hit across court, and I stuck my arm out on the backhand volley. Didn't really know where the ball was, and it went off, sort of, not off the frame, but it certainly wasn't off the middle, and it went about that far above the tin for a winner. And at that point I was like, Greg looked at me because he knew, and then all of a sudden a couple of points later I was 4-0 up, and you know, before I knew it, then you know, I was on that wave again.
Matthew's done it, 1-4 his third World Championship title in his own backyard. What an epic battle between the old rivalry of England-France. The crowd all on their feet here at Manchester Central. Standing ovation.
I have mixed feelings about that match ball, because it's been shown so many times and it really doesn't show squash in a great light. You know, we just had a match for however many minutes where we just absolutely killed each other, and then the last point he sort of gives it up into the tin. You know, it's sort of been shown on Question of Sport and BBC, things like that, and it looks like, oh, that's not very good. But trust me, it was one of the hardest matches I've ever played, certainly psychologically. You know, the level of intensity and application, it hinged on 1 or 2 points here and there all the way through. And you know, I got finally a bit of breathing space in the 5th game, and as I said, that summer I got married, and I sort of changed my schedule a little bit, didn't start the season as early as I normally would. Only had the US Open as a warm-up event before the World, so it was a bit of a calculated risk. You know, didn't have as many. If I'd have lost first round in the US Open, I would have gone into Manchester very undercut. So it was a risky strategy, but one that, you know, ultimately prevailed. And I remember actually getting hammered by Greg in the US Open final a couple of weeks before, and we it's about 25 block walk back to the hotel, and I never walk it. I normally always take a taxi, but me and DP walked it after the final in Philadelphia, and I actually said to him it was probably just being ignorant or arrogant after a loss just to try and make yourself feel better. But I said I'm going to win next week, and he looked at me and he said, probably not wrong there, because I don't say that sort of thing very often. You know, I'm always quite sort of you know, I'm not really bullish about my chance. I always think I'm going to jinx myself if I say something like that, but I felt like I'd learnt so much of what I needed to do to apply myself in big situations, and fortunately I got it right on that occasion. To have a world title next to your name is something, but to win it in your own country is something that probably only being an Olympic gold medalist in London 2012 would have topped. And yeah, it was an honour and a privilege to have been in that position. And yeah, just at the end, the emotion, you know, I was newly married. Maybe it sort of got to the point where I'd maybe deep down stopped believing that I could win those sort of titles. So yeah, it was a big one. I've been excited for the Worlds in Manchester ever since it was announced. The only downside has been a couple of times I wasn't sure I would be able to make it until that point, and now that I'm here, I just can't wait to get going. You know, I said at the start of the season I was cautiously optimistic for this season, and you know, I'm more optimistic now. You know, I've had 2 tournaments under my belt, and you know, I feel like I'm learning, improving. I've got the 2 things this year that have excited me and for the last 4 or 5 years, and I just really can't wait to get underway. I'm at a real good place in my life and my game, and if I lose first round or win, so be it. I just can't wait to showcase what I can do on court in front of the home English fans in Manchester and that amazing support, and experience that vibe again. If I can get all the way through to the final, then hopefully they can suck the ball into the goal, as it were, and help me win that title again.